Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I'm really happy about today's sponsored guest, Austin Medlin from Florida. And he is founder of Close Sales, and he helps coaches take 10 plus sales calls per month. And he's got 100K per month sales script for online coaches and closers. I'm really happy to have him on for this sponsored episode and look forward to having him. So, Devin, welcome.
Yeah,
Austin,
appreciate that.
welcome. Yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself and we'll dive into the questions.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a online coach that supports other online coaches to get better at sales, raise their prices, and scale their offers to 100K per month plus. And then I also help existing sales professionals, whether they do insurance, solar, door-to-door, pest control, any other sales related industry, but they're capped on commissions. They don't love the company they work for. They're not able to work remote and spend more time with their family. I teach them how to transition their skill set into the world of remote high ticket sales so they can start earning 20, 30 plus $1,000 per month.
Excellent. And so we'll dive into it because our audience are a lot of professionals, doctor, lawyer, dentist. And what is your client avatar like? What types of people come to you, either wants, needs, aspirations, desperation, frustrations to work with you?
Yeah, mainly online coaches who have figured out the marketing to some degree. Maybe they're getting 5, 10, 15 plus sales calls booked on their calendar every single month. Maybe they're running paid ads. Maybe they're getting referrals. They're doing organic. They're speaking on stages. They wrote a book. The marketing doesn't really matter to me where the leads come from. I pick up once they get the lead booked on the calendar. That's where I come in to help them close those sales at the highest level, hence the name of the company, closesales.com. I help coaches raise their close rate north of 60% on their highest ticket offers, typically where they can get paid in full on the very first call with little to no objections. And if they get objections, they understand exactly how to handle them. As a CEO, you really just don't have time to spend on sales calls that don't buy. If your close rate is 30%, that means 70% of your time on calls is quite literally being wasted, which as a CEO wearing all the hats, you just don't have the time to do. Then I have some larger clients as well doing $500,000, $2 million per month. They have entire sales teams. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads every month. They need their sales team to be performing at the highest level, but the CEO typically doesn't have enough time to give them the training that they need. So they bring me in as almost a fractional head of sales to get the entire team moving in the right direction.
Interesting. So the next question I have for you is, what is the key distinction to go from selling a book or an online course or some digital product like $97, a couple $100 to high ticket? What is the single distinguishing difference to being a high ticket closer?
The main thing, if you're selling a book or a $97 low ticket product, you're not getting on a sales call for that. So you wouldn't need me at all because you're just selling it right through a landing page. What you really need is a funnel builder and a copywriter to script you out a VSL and a really good sales page that can move the needle in terms of the low ticket sales for you. When you start selling things for $2, $3, $5, $20,000, that's going to require a sales professional to be on the phone with to answer their questions, handle their objections, and to make sure that they're a really good fit. If it's a $97 low ticket thing, it's like, maybe it's a fit, maybe it's not. It's only $97. Why not? But if somebody's going to spend $9, $10, $20,000, they want to make sure that this is exactly what they need before they write a check for that amount of money, which requires a human to human connection. And obviously it takes some proper strategies and skills to be able to move that deal across the line on a 1 hour call.
Interesting. And you also mentioned that at the beginning, a lot of you help people, who have 10 to 15 calls booked. And it sounds like it's a funnel process. How do you go from getting on the calendar to closing? What is the biggest obstacle to getting that sale?
So whenever you figure out the marketing, it could be done through many of different ways, right? So marketing is one challenge that I don't solve with my company. But once you get somebody to show up on a call, there's many challenges to getting that call to actually buy because every human is different and dynamic. So you have to be flexible enough to deal with every type of buyer. Some are rich, some are poor, some are money motivated, some are pain motivated. Everybody's a little bit different. Masculine, feminine, have invested in themselves, haven't invested in themselves, down bad, in momentum, everyone's different. So you have to be able to read the room with the prospect that you're talking to successfully have a conversation that's going to get that individual to buy today. But you can't do that with a script because everyone's different. So if you have a one size fits all script, 20, maybe 30, if you're lucky, 40% of the time, they'll fit into the script and they'll buy every time.
Yeah.
But what about the other 60, 70, 80% of people that don't fit? Then they just don't buy. You lose out on the sale.
Interesting. A follow-up question I have for you is, with the flood of online coaches and life coaches, what distinguishes one from another? Because it seems like the market is so saturated and everybody calls himself a coach. So how do you make these distinctions in choosing who to work with?
You need good marketing and good sales. That's it. If you have good marketing, meaning endless leads coming in, and you have the ability to close those leads at a very high level, you can make $500,000 to $1 million a month pretty easily with those two things. Now, to consistently make $500,000 to $1 million a month over time, you also need a third pillar, which is client success. Because if you enroll a bunch of people, they don't get results in your program, you're not going to get referrals, you're not going to get testimonials, you're going to get a ton of bad press. You're not going to be able to sustain that long term. But the first two steps is marketing, because you got to have people to sell to, then a proper sales process to actually be able to move the needle and extract a credit card. And then the most important piece, in my opinion, would be the client success, because that's what allows everything to keep turning and going.
Yeah.
In terms of differentiation, like, a lot of my clients are fitness coaches. There's tens of thousands of fitness coaches out there. And anytime somebody looks at me and says, hey, the market's really saturated, there's a ton of fitness coaches, I say, go walk down the street, and does everybody have an 8-pack in their shredded? And the answer is no. 95% or 98% of the people are overweight, depressed, stressed, anxious, not where they want to be. So I don't care how many fitness coaches there are, there's still a massive market of people who need to lose weight and get in shape. In terms of life coaches, how many people do you know are super excited? They love the money they make. They love the career they have. They love their family, and they're genuinely fulfilled and happy. Not most people, right? So most people are down bad and not where they want to be. So I don't care how many life coaches there are. The market is telling us that we need more of them because most people aren't where they want to be mentally. So I would say there's a lot of coaches because there's a very low barrier to entry. If you have an Instagram or a Facebook, you can call yourself a coach. You typically don't need a certification. You don't need workman's comp. You don't need general liability. You don't need employees. You don't really need much at all. But the ones who stand out are the ones that are investing in themselves to understand marketing, to understand their ideal client, to understand sales, and then how to go to war in terms of client success to actually get these people results. Those are the people that are making the most amount of money because they're making the investments in themselves so they can learn, grow, and become the best.
Interesting. And I think you've positioned yourself very well in this market, helping people close sales. So you consider yourself a coach as well. What are some of the things that helped you to stand out? Some people say, oh, I went to a Tony Robbins, or I went to a Dale Carnegie, or what are some resources that helped you to really distinguish yourself?
I did go to Tony Robbins, but that was when I was 18. I went VIP out in Texas to Tony Robbins. So that was really cool. I'm 31 now, so that feels like a lifetime ago. But what helped me stand out is I actually did the thing that I'm selling. And what I mean by that is 6 years ago, I became a high ticket closer. So I wasn't a business owner. I was working for a company closing sales. And so I ended up taking 7,000 sales calls. That's 7,000 hours sitting one-to-one with people on Zoom from all over the world. And I collected over $7 million in cash. And I made about $1 million in commissions as a high ticket closer. So I didn't read a book. I didn't go to a seminar to learn how to sell. I actually did the thing for 7,000 hours and created my own methodology, my own process that was used on thousands of calls personally, that I've then taught to over 500 coaches and closers. So when you look at that collectively, my RFPDP method is what I call it. That's been used on tens and tens of thousands of sales calls in virtually every niche and every industry that you can imagine. And it's collected over $100 million in cash in the past 6 years between me and my clients. There's a lot of people who teach, but they've never done. So I did the thing for 4.5, almost 5 years straight, taking 12 to 16 calls a day. I got really good at the thing. which kind of qualifies me to teach it. I didn't read a book and wake up yesterday and say, yay, I'm a sales expert. Let's teach people. And it's just a watered down, ripped off methodology that I learned from someone else. I actually sat in this chair for many of hours and sold high ticket stuff, handled objections, did the whole thing.
Yeah. Talk about, because you mentioned client success. That's what's gonna sustain you. Talk about some of your successes with some of your clients and the ones you've worked with.
Yeah. So if you looked at my website, closesales.com, I have close to 24 hours of testimonial videos. If you just sat and watched them all on 1x speed, it'd take about 24 hours to go through. And then on my Instagram, I have over 850 screenshots of individual client wins. And there's probably another 500 or 600 that I just have never screenshot out of my community and posted. But I would say what comes top of mind is I had this client, Rachel, who hired me, and she was stuck for about 4 or 5 years at $30,000 a month. She's a fitness coach for women. So she hired me just out of frustration. I know I can be making more money and I don't understand why I'm not. And I was like, okay, I understand why you're not. You have a 2-call close process. You're not raising prices, so people don't really see the value in what you're selling because the price is so low. You have no ability to handle objections and hold people accountable and tell them the truth. So I could see it very clearly, all these gaps that I could fill. So she hired me, and last month she did $269,000 in cash. So she went from 30K a month for years and years to $250,000 in cash just a couple months after hiring me by fixing all of these things. I would say what I'm an expert at is bottleneck identification. Because if you don't even know why you're stuck, you have no ability to fix the problem that you don't even know exists. So I help my clients bottleneck identify and then solve that bottleneck as close to identification point as humanly possible. Because step one, you now know you have a problem. Step two, you got to solve the problem. So I'm an expert at coming up with creative solutions to solve that problem, which is then just going to create another bottleneck somewhere else in the business that we rapidly identify and then we rapidly solve. That way we can just keep scaling without getting stuck. I've done that many of times. I had a client, Stefan, go from 9K to 100K in 30 days. Like multiple of my fitness coaches are doing over $100,000 a month in cash now. And I've worked with businesses doing 2 million a month and I help them scale. Also people doing 20, 30 who are looking to get to 100 or 200. So I've ran the gambit in terms of like solopreneurs and then full-fledged kind of enterprise type companies.
Interesting. The other thing that was on my mind is a lot of people listening, they're entrepreneurs and they want scalability to hop on to 15 plus or Zoom calls an hour. If you close, that's great. But if you don't, you waste an hour, or at least you learn something. So how do you scale this in terms of time? Because you still have to spend 1 hour face to face with that client and get them to buy your products and services. How do you automate and scale it?
Yeah, so you can't automate high ticket sales. There was a companies that came out a couple years ago that were like, here's how to sell by chat, sell in the DMs. I don't know about you, but if I'm spending $10,000, $20,000 on something, like I'd rather meet with a human. It doesn't have to be the CEO, but I want to meet with someone to ask my questions and make sure it's a vibe and a personality match. And I like how they show up energetically. So if you're going to do $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 products, you need a sales call. So the way to scale it, not automate it, would be to build a sales team. But you have to be strategic when building a sales team, because if you do it too early, your company isn't big enough to pay salespeople what they're actually worth. So they get burnt out and they quit. And you're probably not good enough at sales. So you don't know how to teach these people how to do something that you've never done. If your close rate is 18%, you can't hire a closer and expect his close rate or her close rate to be at 45%. That would be triple what you're currently doing, and you're the CEO. So it's that $100,000 a month mark is really the sweet spot. If you can get yourself as a solopreneur to 100 grand a month, on the lowest end, I'd say 60, 70, but preferably 100. Now, if we pay 10% commission, which most people in my industry do, that's 10 grand a month to a closer. We can find a pretty decent closer at 10K who can then grow and help us scale and then make more and more money along the way.
Interesting. The other question I have for you is, what are some of the frustrations and challenges with learning this skill set and in growing and teaching it to others?
When most people come to me, they're almost a Frankenstein monster of sales. They got this part of their script from this YouTube video. They paid $12 for this PDF. They learned this other random thing from their friend in a different industry who's apparently good at sales doing something totally unrelated. And they're almost this like Frankenstein monster of advice. And I have to remove all the bad, keep the good. I don't want to rip it all down if there's parts that are good. And then I have to rebuild it from top to bottom with a process based on human psychology that's guaranteed to work because it's been working on tens and tens of thousands of calls. So what happens sometimes, not all the time, sometimes people hire me and their close rate gets worse. Now, that's a very short-lived, like maybe 1 or 2 weeks, because we're breaking down and rebuilding. It's like the first day you go to the gym, you're really sore. You don't feel great, but you're making progress. So if they can weather the storm for 1 or 2 weeks, which their close rate was already pretty shit anyway, so it's if it gets worse, like it's not the end of the world, then it skyrockets back up. And there's pain, right? Like people are afraid to tell people the truth. And that's a big thing that's in my program. I'm like, look, if we know we can help this person, we need to go to war and help this person. And sometimes that comes with tough conversations. I don't have kids, but if I did, and my child was about to make a really poor decision, like the stove is burning hot, and they're like, I want to touch the stove. I'm not going to be like, yeah, let's think about that. Let's see how that could work. It's like, no, you're not going to do that. That's a bad decision. So we almost have to treat prospects like children because they're on the call because they're not where they want to be. And they need someone to step up, step out and tell them the truth so we can ultimately change the trajectory of their life, which they will always thank us for later. I think a lot of people are just afraid to have the tough conversations because they have this desire to be liked. They want people to like them. I don't care about being liked. I care about changing people's life. And if I can tell them the truth, they might not like me today, but they'll buy the program. I'll change their life and they will love me later. So it's almost like a temporary loss of social esteem to ultimately have the greatest gift on earth, which is serving people, which gives you the ultimate fulfillment.
Interesting. And around the like final moments, talk about your program, what it includes, and how can people find you and learn from you?
Yeah. So my program's all one-on-one. I don't have coaches that I pass you off to that are just like mini me's or watered down versions. Like I work with my clients all one-on-one, very high touch, very hands-on and fully customized because every business owner is a little bit different. They have different prospects, different price points. Some want to make 30 grand a month and they'd be happy. Some want to make 300 grand a month and they'd be happy, right? So I have to figure out what they want and then build them a pathway and hold their hand to make sure that they get it. Easiest way to connect with me is on Instagram. It's just at THE Austin Medlin. And then in my Instagram, I also have my YouTube channel linked right there in my bio. So Instagram's great for short form sales strategies. And then YouTube has me speaking on stages, me speaking on podcasts, really tactical, longer form stuff.
Wow.
A lot of people tell me, they'll see me at the gym or hit me up on social media. They're like, dude, I watch your YouTube videos every morning when I'm eating breakfast. My wife walks out. Yep, there he is. Listen to Austin's YouTube. So YouTube's good for sitting down, having a meal or driving. And then Instagram is just quicker, shorter content.
Yeah. One final question from the audience is what sort of can you apply these techniques to, because you mentioned YouTube and short form content and speaking in front of groups. How do your strategies differ when you're not one-on-one, but you're you're speaking to crowds or to the masses?
Yeah, I would say I speak to the masses, but I don't sell to the masses, right? So I just got back from California. I spoke on stage in front of about 115 people, but that is me giving value, not me selling. Now, if you want to learn how to sell from stage or sell to the masses, you should go hire Eli Wild and pay him whatever amount of money he's requiring because he is quite literally the best in the world that I've ever seen from selling on stage to a group of people and extracting millions and millions of dollars in a 1-hour presentation from the audience. So he was Tony Robbins' top sales rep for many years, broke all the company records there for Tony Robbins and worked for him for a very long time. So I would say he is far more qualified to sell to the masses than I am. That's who I would go hire. I say I'm one of the best in the world when it comes to a one-on-one Zoom conversation.
Interesting. Yeah, really interesting distinction. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciated this and learned a lot in the audience. And thanks so much and keep up the great work.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.